Hey everyone, this is going to be a little bit of a serious video. It's got a serious topic, one that could have ramifications within both content creation as an industry, but gaming culture as a whole. And I'm going to do my best to give it some context, kind of talk about some of the things that has been going on, but more or less I'm not asking you to change your mind about the situation, and we will set up the situation so you should have some information, and I'll also link to resources down below that you can go and find more information for yourself, because this video isn't going to be the be-all end-all to everything that's happened over the last year. But I want to call attention to it to either have you look at it for the first time or reevaluate the situation and see if any information is important to you as a part of the discussion, but is also a part of something that within the industry, whether you're thinking about getting into content creation, you are a content creator, or you enjoy content creation, the question about fair use, targeted harassment, and more is all on the line. This is a serious topic. It deals with serious accusations, and I don't want to sit here and, kind of discredit anybody who's come forward in this story. In fact, I would say, for me personally, I looked at this story and I've been following it for over the last year, especially really close to the last couple of months. But I haven't really talked about it publicly because there's just so much information. It's really hard to say what is right. But there are things that we can definitely talk about, and I want to kind of highlight that. But at the end of the day, I do essentially ask myself the question, what if everybody is telling the truth? And I started with that premise because perception is a huge part of reality, and we'll get more into that. But I do want to take an aside, talking about cancel culture specifically as a quote, something that I think is something that I like to reflect on. A part of this, there is obviously exceptions to any kind of rule, and we can always debate kind of the nuances, especially when we talk about things in generalities. But the problem with cancel culture is it prevents the accused from having kind of their side told. And in the end, you end up basically prevent people from being able to move forward and get healing. And this is for both parties, both the accused and the accuser in this case. And yes, we can talk about all the things that, all the systems that are failing and the reason why cancel culture has become so prevalent, but that's not the course for this video. That could be more discussions down the line. You can always reach out to me and have a conversation if you need, because again, I would never want to encourage anybody to remain silent. In fact, it takes a lot of courage. I definitely believe that it takes a lot of courage, and there's a lot of risk to somebody coming out and saying when something bad has happened to them. So let's not discount those people who have been making those claims. That's not what this video is about. In fact, we've got, again, to talk about the situation as it exists. So if you're still here and you're curious as to what the hell's going on, this story is going to revolve heavily around Lono. SayNoToRage is his channel, and essentially the Destiny community, with either the most epic of trolls that has been going on, a troll that is committing perjury to basically, stir the pot, or you have somebody who's manipulating, going behind the scenes to either make somebody look innocent or make somebody look guilty, or you have some corruption at the highest level in terms of content creation and the relationship with the content creator specifically and a publisher. I'm not making any claims as to what is happening, because right now we currently don't know, but it's important that I think we all start watching the situation as it unfolds, because it could have some serious ramifications to pretty much all of us. And so that's what we're talking about today. As a brief summary, again, links to resources that are more fully documented will be in the description of this video if you want to go dive into that rabbit hole. I'd encourage you to do so. There's some interesting stuff out there, but to kind of do a very high-level overview. Lono was canceled last year. He had harassed some females at some conventions, and that seems pretty well documented. Whether he was intentionally high or unintentionally high, that essentially was his excuse. He apologized for said behavior. He went into therapy, and he didn't appear to repeat said offenses. At that time, he also grew heavily within the Destiny directory, sometimes being number one on top of the Destiny directory. And essentially what happened is that his accusers came out. He was essentially canceled, kicked off of Twitch, didn't know what to do, and essentially has restarted completely over here on YouTube, and so far been building up a steady pace. Now, fast forward a year later, his story starts to pick up a little bit more speed as some of the people, I don't want to say co-conspirators, but as like one figure in general, Sarah Daniels, continues to speak publicly on this, basically in clips admitting that she conspired, that they had meetings, and that they were going to take him down. Like they were all having these conversations, and they basically all decided that this is what they were going to do. They were going to knock him off the top of the directory. He has to be canceled. He has to stand for his crimes. Now, it's clear that no laws were broken by him. There have been investigations where he has been, where there was no foul play or wrongdoing, further accusations that came out about how he manipulated things. Like, there's a bunch of evidence that basically exonerate him, or if nothing else, really cause a lot of doubt, throw a lot of shade at the situation as to what they're being claimed. But they've, that side has really kind of dug in their heels, and they've kind of set up their, their line in the sand. So, anyway, so a YouTuber by Upper Echelon Games, he put together a video, and he highlights the clips of Sarah Daniels saying that they got together, that they were like, we've got to take this guy out. Basically just confirming a lot of things, especially in that case. It's very damning in terms of the evidence. And honestly, if this ever went to court, those clips being on this channel are very important. What happens next is actually right before that, sorry, a little out of order. Before Upper Echelon makes his video, out of nowhere, like, yes, Lono got kicked off of Twitch. Bungie developer bans him from Destiny. There was no violation, there was no reason, and all within their power. But he gets developer banned because he's continuing to make his content here on YouTube. That's where I actually was talking with some friends about this. I said, Bungie just gave Lono a gift. Like, if he is guilty, if he's this monster that some people say that he is, they just made him a victim. And if he's not a victim, if he is actually a victim, like if he isn't this monster, they've really kicked off a catalyst, because this is going to cause people to go and reevaluate the whole situation, because it didn't make sense. Why did he get kicked out of the game completely for just playing the game? Yes, he could go buy it, but this brought a lot of attention back on him, put the spotlight back on him. This is where Upper Echelon picks up the story, goes in, puts it together his video, and that video gets copyright struck because he has clips from Sarah Daniels. Sarah Daniels, on behalf of a lawyer who works for Bitwise Legal, who also works for Bungie. So this gets really entangled really quickly, and this is where all of a sudden, you kind of have that kind of alarm going off in your head, going like, there's something really wrong here. So in the case of the lawyer, in the case of Bitwise Legal, that's all publicly documented. That's documented in the strikes. That's documented there. I think that's legit. What happens next is really insane. Then you end up having, he has a picture of that she has publicly on her Instagram, kind of highlight who he's talking about. And that picture gets struck for copyright. Thankfully, YouTube in both these situations have stepped in and continued to fight that. That's like, this is not a legit copyright strike. And so either a troll, especially on the second one, is what is initiating the copyright strike. Either somebody behind the scenes is trying to manipulate the situation by doing a fake copyright strike to keep the story in the fold, or there's something wrong within that family. And I'm talking about within the Destiny content creation family, being that Sarah Daniels is married to a Destiny developer. At the end of the day, like I'm sure by now everybody's really aware of the Streisand effect. What if legitimate? If Sarah Daniels is targeting Lono, is specifically using her connections at Bungie to kick this guy out of the game, to kick him off the top of the directories, to do these things, she fundamentally sets back legitimate people who have been harassed, both and molested, and just had horrible experiences. And those are the ones that have been silent and have spoken out. She's using that power of authority. She's using somebody's like mistake. And yes, Lono messed up. My issue with him in that situation, he's married. And that's no excuse. And I want to kind of talk to everybody out there who's thinking about getting into content creation or is in it, ways you can protect yourself from these kind of situations. Because you have to think of this like a business. There is no HR for content creators. There's no disputer, and that's why we've seen the rise of cancel culture. So the system needs to figure itself out. We need a way to arbitrate and have situations in which that things can be healed. We can have healing. We can have like a resolution without essentially the mob, because the other side of it is that we've seen time and time again, and more studies will start showing this as well. So pay attention really quickly. Those who come out first, speak first, they're the ones who have their story highlighted. And anybody who's like contrary to that, that's what gets struck down. You have the mob that comes out and essentially picks a side, and it's usually the side that speaks out first. And that's why you see when somebody is going to have a story about them, they'll come out first and they'll come out on the attack, and they don't get canceled. I don't think that's the solution. I don't think the solution is that you have to go on the attack, because that doesn't help the situation at hand. It doesn't, it's not good for anybody. It's not good for the victims, and it's not good for when maybe it's just a simple misunderstanding. Maybe it's not. We shouldn't. Yes, we don't want monsters running about on the internet, because we have enough of that, and we're constantly fighting that. So our tools, our ability to communicate, especially in this new medium, it's still in its infancy, and we have to continue as each other, hold each other accountable, but work together to come up with a solution that helps and is good for everybody. But we'll struggle through that together. So that's where this comes to a head, right? Either Lono is a monster, and I don't think so based off of the evidence. Everything that we've seen is that he made inappropriate remarks. He made inappropriate gestures. What he did was and should not be applauded. And that's kind of the hard part of the situation. It's this isn't a defense of him, but he did apologize, and this is on record. He did go to therapy and essentially changed his ways from everything that we've seen. Now, somebody could have another story that hasn't come out yet. We ultimately are at the mercy of kind of being on the sidelines with this one. But the whole connection with Sarah Daniels and with Bungie and with Lono, and the continuing of it, not satisfied that they got him kicked off of Twitch, but we got to have to get him kicked out of the game. And then anybody presenting evidence that shows that in a bad light or calls it out, it has their video struck down. It's scary, and I'm really interested to see what comes of this. Now, I reached out to Hong Law, Richard. He does great virtual legality. He looks into things and legal issues within video games. He did a lot of really good stuff on Cyberpunk, a lot of really good videos. He's a lawyer, and so he's been following this as well. At the time of this recording, he hasn't uploaded anything yet, but I'm very much excited to see what his take is on this whole situation. I wanted to talk to you guys today about it so that you can either arm yourself, you can be informed, you can look at this in a couple different ways. And always we should be seeking the truth. We should always be interested in that goal of finding out what is right, and having that having a safe place that people can create good content so we can get back to talking about the fun stuff. Now, if you're out there and you're trying to get into this, or you're into this, I would say you need to find a really good friend. You need to be if you ever go to a convention, you have to think of it like a work convention. When I was in college, the priests ended up taking us into the abbey for this big dinner, and they brought out lots of wine, and they said, all right, if this is a business meeting, it's not about getting drunk. You need to know your limits. You need to know what you're doing, because it's not, this isn't a party just because there's alcohol involved, just because this is something exciting. You have to treat what you're doing like a business, like a job. That's where Lono messed up. If you're just going out there to have fun, he was already a prominent figure within the community. So even if you're not a content creator yet, you have to think, if you're going in that direction, that you got to treat this like we're all work colleagues. Because in a way we are. There is obviously competition, and that's kind of where the whole strike of Lono becomes really, really sick. Because if Sarah orchestrated this as a way of taking an infraction and using it to cancel her competition, that is downright cold-blooded. And that's something we should all be very concerned about. So you have to learn to protect yourself in that. And I'm not saying, anyway, that's a whole can of worms that we can open up in one video and this become, you know, a whole nightmare of a situation. But all right, so yeah, protect yourself, meaning have somebody to, if you don't know how to drink in public, if you know, don't know how to act, if you want to go and make this a thing, like, yeah, go do that elsewhere. Like, that's something you can hang out with your friends, but have somebody with you to help keep you honest, to help make sure that if a situation arises, power dynamics are a real thing. And they will forever be a real thing. We're not going to ever cancel power dynamics within fame and content creation. It is a story that is as old as time. And so just note that, like, especially if you're like at the top of a directory, there's an influence and a power that you wield that you might not necessarily be aware of. And that's not an excuse. It's not an excuse to sit down and say, you know, I didn't know. It's like, because it's, somebody said, I heard this quote, it's like, it's okay until it's not. Like, if you're a small creator and, you know, like, that's why you don't see a lot of bosses dating a lot of, you know, people that work for them. There's a power dynamic in business. There's a power dynamic in content creation. There's a level of influence that people can wield and hold over each other. And we've heard horror after horror stories coming out of these Twitch cons, out of these environments. And I've always just said, it's just a matter of time before that story gets kicked up again. And it got kicked up last year. It'll probably continue to get kicked up with more horror stories about people using their influence or getting in a situation that was, you know, not preferred or downright dangerous. So essentially what you can do is you can have somebody to keep you accountable in case you're still growing and maturing and you don't know how to handle yourself, you know, around other like-minded individuals. But you got to think of this as that, you know, you're at a business function. And unfortunately, there's no HR department. There's no appeals team. And if you go and, yeah, you can, you know, apparently have things that you've done years ago come back to bite you later, especially if you start getting a monicum of success. My dad always kind of says to find the relationship, you know, in business when you're talking about pennies, not when you're talking about millions of dollars. Don't wait until your company's like the biggest thing in the world before you sit down and say, okay, we should figure out what our split is. You know, like now that we're looking at millions of dollars, as opposed to, I haven't ever seen that day come. But when you're talking about pennies, it's a lot easier to kind of get everybody on the same page and understand what's going on. So figure that out for yourself. Go in prepared, whether you're thinking about getting into content creation or you're in content creation right now. These conventions should be treated in your mind as a business opportunity and that networking you know, expectation, and not an opportunity for you to cut loose, go nuts, and create and make and either harass or make other people uncomfortable. Like, I guess the best lesson is just don't be a monster. But as we've seen it, you know, time and time said before, don't be stupid. And we'll just kind of wrap it up with that. Pay attention to the story, guys. This is something that the reason I sat down and I wanted to put this on this channel was so it's in front of as many people as possible so that you can make up your decision about what evidence is there, what evidence isn't there, what questions you have. This isn't to exonerate anyone in this situation, but it's to say we need to pay attention. Question of fair use, question of targeted harassment, question of that relationship with publishers and developers is really suspect. And this could set both the industry back. It could set you know, a lot of things, you know, backwards, you know, and that would be unfortunate. But we'll have to wait and see. I'd love to know your thoughts. Any and all are welcome. Just be respectful, no matter what position you fall in the comments below. Hopefully I did this somewhat justice. I know this is a atypical kind of video for me here on Ginger Prime, but it's important that we sit down and we talk about it because it is definitely concerning. And yeah, thanks for your time, guys. Love you faces. Hope to see you in my next video. But until then, take care.